Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yay! We're back!
We're live.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's been so long that I was able to join one
It's
session
been
of the
so
Despise
long.
Girls.
You're abandoning us.
Of course, that's not true. I was so jealous about the conversations that you and Rena had last week that I said to myself, I must clear some time
I
this
know.
week. Yes. So here we are. But unfortunately, now it's Rena who is unavailable.
Let me tell the audience, this is why we haven't had our Despise Girls session in a long time because every week I'm reaching out to say, can we have the session? And sometimes it's me that I'm saying, I'm sorry, I can't, but it's literally the three of us unable to be here. So we were aiming at being the three of us together, and it's just been impossible. And if we didn't hold this session today, then we would have to wait another month until the cup finishes. So it's like, just let's organize it. So
Yeah,
yeah, but
that's true.
Rina, we're missing you. Where are you?
Oh, but I'm so happy for Rina because she's also taking some time off. Remember, she texted us that she is in Jakarta right now, having
True.
some,
Her
personal
hometown.
time off to
Yeah.
visit family and attend to some stuff back home. So we're happy
Yes.
for her that she's taking care of herself.
Yes, very much needed, Rina. It's been insane. It's been some crazy months for all of us and for the world, but also particularly I don't want to undermine the personal lives of us as activists, right? Because we still need to take care of a lot of things. So it's been tough. It's been tough. And then we wanted to have this session for so long, and it's just been impossible.
So, how are you, my dear? You've
Oh,
also been
God.
everywhere, but not really. How are things with you?
Yes. I think the audience by now knows that I'm a mutant, so I have an immune condition. It just decided to flare up in the middle of just like that. So it's been tough, and I've been managing to focus on some priorities, but then going from full on to just prioritizing what your body's able to do, it's been really complicated. And I'm still a bit fragile, so I'm just attending meetings, but just with an awareness that I only can do very little, and that it's gonna be a long recovery. So it's like that. But that is a warning sign for everybody that we need to,
But
yeah,
even if you are already dealing with a lot of your health issues, you're still very very much into activism. I mean, in the time that all this time that you were not really feeling very well, let me see, what did you manage to pull off? Number one, this civil society women's letter against the Black Rock, that UN women, we talked about that in a previous episode. That was that was you driving this campaign and advocacy of the different feminist organizations calling on the UN women to pull out from its partnership with BlackRock. And then you were also not feeling very well, but then I've been receiving all of this information about rejecting the IMF gender policy. Again, it has Emilia Reyes handwriting on it. So maybe you can share
yeah,
with me, because it's been a long time since the last conversation we had, but
I
also for
know.
the other folks, why are you doing all of these things? Why are you attacking these institutions?
Yeah, so it's really exciting because the last call, as you were saying, that we had, I was letting the audience know that we were about to launch this BlackRock letter. we were gathering some signatures, and this was organized by a cross movement effort with many organizations from many paths of our agendas. So it was not only feminist, but in the end, organically, you know how movements are moving on, which is the one who does the work is the one who's really pushing forward, right? So in the end, it was again feminist organizations that were pushing until the very end. But I think it was also because of the nature of the letter, because this was talking about how UN Women was having an MOU partnership with BlackRock on gender impact investment, whatever you name it. It wasn't even very clear, but even if it wasn't that, it was like, what, is BlackRock gonna be the best, authority on that after all of the human rights violations and women's rights violations that they're promoting? So, and their investment in so many fields. Maybe you also the letter, but also so it got we gathered 700 plus signatures from all around the world, from organizations and individuals, many of them global networks, and many of them eminent, academics and leaders, etc. So it was a very powerful letter, and it shows that, first of all, that women's rights should not be confined only to the women's movement, but also, in the other hand, that women's rights are also linked to the largest challenges of the world. So this issue we're standing also to corporate capture of the UN, meaning that how corporate power and profits is really embedded into the United Nations agencies. And so this is a concern for so many movements in so many realms. We've seen it in the COP with Coca-Cola being the a corporate funder, and so many others in the food and security system, UNDP with a partnership with fossil fuels industries, etc. So this is a concern that was really impacting all of the movements. So it shows that there is a lot of potential as well to raise our voice against corporate capture in general. But as I was saying, also in particular, given the nature that we're also calling out UN Women, it was only natural to see the leadership of feminist movements we are still monitoring the next steps, because first, it was a very successful campaign. UN Women withdrew themselves from the partnership, but we still see the announce of the MOU in BlackRock's page. UN Women refused to share in a transparent manner the MOU. So, and they're saying, no, this is private. This is part of our, private dealings. But to us, it's like we're asking corporate actors and public actors like governments to be transparent about their dealings and contracts. So should you. You're UN. So that's unacceptable. So that's another path that we need to keep on going. And further, Young Women says they're going to have a strategy with the private sector. And it's like, yeah, but then you should consult with the feminist movement. It's not like the private sector is going to tell you what to do with the private sector, because we know how that is going to go. And so it's been really tough. So that is a monitoring that we need to do. But in the larger picture, that's where the potential of all of these actors who mobilize together needs to keep on going to tackle the corporate capture. So that's once I'm feeling stronger, I will have more energy to try to do that. But of course, it's not a personal effort, right? It's been amazing how it has been driven collectively, and especially shout out to Sanam Amin and Diana Yahaya, who were also very key actors pushing, and with all of their time and energy and wisdom and fierceness. So it was also an amazing effort, and many others, right? But these two were key in moving the thread and the thinking. So they were amazing as well. So yeah, that's on the BlackRock. But let me stop here, and so we can you can share one thing that you're doing, and then we're coming back to mine because I've missed you so much. I haven't seen you in a while, and I know you've been like
Oh,
crazy, also traveling nonstop. So where have you been, and where have you been doing? Tell the audience what is it that
yeah.
that life
So,
is guiding us towards.
well, I've been around um, doing a lot of advocacy on climate justice. Um, I think it was in September that I was in Germany,
Yeah.
where we moved around in different areas, no, within Germany, to talk to climate activists, to talk to young people, to talk to parliamentarians about why we need, to develop and grow our movements, both global north and global south, if we want to push for real changes and real solutions. So I'm actually remembering you, Amelia, while we were riding on the train. It's like we were having these conversations before that it's usually the global south activists who talks to the global north activists to tell them this is our situation, please help us, blah blah blah, something like that, in a way that is good because this is our stories are not usually heard in this kinds of audiences, but at the same time I remember you telling me that no, it's the global north people, global north activists who should be calling out their own governments about their policies towards, developing countries, what their impacts are of investments, etc., etc. But also telling their governments that this is how they should behave in the global scene, especially for a big country like Germany, which is really a superpower. So I think those conversations were really important, and it was also very enlightening for me because in the different areas that I visited, we also heard about local struggles of communities in Germany who are also suffering from different unfair and unjust policies of their own governments that are also uh, more oriented towards protecting the interests of the rich in Germany. So you also see the
Mm.
irony of inequality in a rich country, that there are also people being displaced by some infrastructure project, etc., etc. So at least that somehow broaden my horizon, that there is struggle going on, in the global north, where communities are also resisting unfair and unjust policies of their governments. So that's what kept me busy uh, in September. But also, I've been doing a lot of reading up and developing um, strategies with other movements in preparation for COP27.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've been forced to, try and understand all of these technical details around the negotiations on loss and
Yeah.
damage. Uh, it's really a lot of work trying to sift through many documents and trying to understand why, for instance, why is it that, you know, in September also we heard the UN Special Rapporteur call in his report to the UN General Assembly, a proposal to establish a loss and damage fund under the UN General Assembly. So it's like, that's good. It's a higher profile, no, in terms of our uh, call, our campaign to establish a reparations fund that would support communities from the worst impacts of the climate crisis. But again, there were some questions. Why is the UN Special Rapporteur calling on the UN General Assembly instead of, directing his call to
Even
the UN Climate Convention. So
yes.
isn't it just another distraction, etc., etc.? So
Mm,
you have to understand a lot of those
mm.
dynamics within that complicated UN system. So yeah, and just this morning, or at least morning my time, you were still sleeping then. I was in a dialogue with some civil society friends of ours, together with the UN Special Rapporteur himself. So we were in a Zoom meeting, and we were throwing all of these questions to him, which was really good because at least we understood at least some of his strategies, that he's not totally against the loss and damage fund being under the UN Climate Convention, but because he thinks that the process has stagnated for so long, you know, uh, maybe it's a boom factor, a wake up call that probably with the help of your favorite UN Secretary General,
Gosh. Oh
things
yeah,
can
because he's
move
so
somehow.
effective. He's very handsome in action and very effective with outcomes.
Yeah, so a lot of our efforts now are really towards preparing for this upcoming meeting of the UN Climate Convention in
Yeah.
Egypt, which is happening in a week's time, no?
Can
Around
you
eight
believe
days.
the year is coming to an end? And as
Yeah,
always, with a slap in our face, attending the COP, which is horrible and painful.
yeah, but you know,
Yeah.
compared to last year, where loss and damage was very high profile, but very disappointing outcomes. Of course,
Yeah.
which rich country would readily say, yes, we admit we're accountable for all the losses and damages in the developing world. um, Now even rich countries are forced to
Yes.
deal with it,
Yes.
or at least they are forced to deal with the question of
It's in the
having to
agenda now.
it is it's like incredible, no? How much advocacy we can do,
Yep.
together of course with other actors, that we can somehow manage to get our voices across.
Yeah.
It's not
But
easy, and
let's
of course
explain the
anything else will
audience.
happen. Yeah.
Let's explain the audience why this
Mm,
is a victory, loss and damage in the COP, the climate change
yes.
COP.
Uh-huh. Because in the negotiations, it's all talk about mitigation or reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and also adaptation, helping communities cope with the impacts. But for the longest time, rich countries especially have been trying to evade any discussion on losses and damages beyond what adaptation can respond to. There are limits to adaptation. So, it was a breakthrough because with the recent report from the scientists, not the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they provided scientific confirmation that losses and damages from climate impacts are already happening in massive scale, even if the world rapidly decarbonizes. Because the amount of greenhouse gas already in the atmosphere, that's already altered the climate systems. So for the longest time, every rich country in the world wants to downplay the science of loss and damage.
Yes. Hate them.
Yes, but now we have the backing of scientific evidence, so they can no longer deny that loss and damage is happening. So,
They cannot deny, but let's tell
mm,
the audience that they've been
yeah.
refusing to talk about it in the climate change convention because it's binding. So they are forced
Mm,
to then whatever the outcome is to fulfill the outcome. So they have been postponing, and with just the rhetorical fights and arguments, that topic wasn't even in the agenda. And so
yep.
it's been, and they are the powerful because they are the ones with money, but it has been really with a lot of like stubbornness from developing countries and civil society and social movements that this is now in the agenda, and especially with the lead of the small island developing states
Mm.
and the least developed countries, that this is now a reality. So it is a great, as I say, a great victory now.
At least we've won one fight. Check.
Yes.
And I think the really big task or big test for COP27 is getting polluters to pay for the harm that they've caused. No, I think that's the
Yes.
bottom line.
Good.
We want them to pay up for loss and damage. We want
Yeah.
them to pay up for the monies that they have promised since 15 years ago, no, at COP15 in Copenhagen, that they were going to raise 100 billion US dollars every year beginning 2020, la da 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 da. But they haven't done that. No, so I think COP27 is going to be an important fight, an important moment where our fights for climate justice will take center stage. Because we, I mean, Emilia, COP27 is not happening in a vacuum. Now we're living in a world of high energy prices, inflation, aggravated inequalities, war, a lot of uncertainty. But it's also a world where many governments and corporations are using these crises to increase resource
Yes.
extraction, to
Crisis
increase
profiteering.
environmental destruction. So climate justice is not something that governments can opt out because of their own national context. Like they I'm sure we will hear a lot about the war in Ukraine, etc., to justify further, coal production, gas exploration, etc., etc. So we need to foil their plan.
I know. I know. Well, so many things that you have said. Let me go back to what you're saying first about the global north responsibility and
Mm,
the actors. It relates to this one as well, right? Um, I was because in the summer I had this month and a half trip to many meetings, most of all of them in developed countries, and it was really painful. It was really difficult. The way it's a racist thing that they see us in the developing world like we are cases. Now we are presenting cases when we are talking about testimonies or how it's climate change or any crisis like the pandemic, the lack of access to vaccines because of the hoarding of the vaccines or any other issue. They are just like, oh, this is the case of Bolivia, this is the case of Sri Lanka, this is the case, like, but they have a narrative that is like the framing, the theoretical framework, and they are just I don't know how to say it, but to them it's like we are the reality and you are the cases, the folkloric cases. And that has been really tough because again to them it's natural that we are subsumed in violent context, that we are in our case in Latin America, that we have the organized crime just in our daily life, or that in the Philippines that you have a dictator. To them it's natural because like, oh well, they're savages, they're not fully civilized. And to them it's like, despite they allowing their societies to go into fascist regimes, they are still thinking that, but we have the strongest democratic processes and we are whatever, and we are the evolved people, and we are the enlightened people, and we are giving you money so that you can fiddle with your reality for a little bit and report back, but report back and we will give you more money. So it's like, it's so I was really affected by it. I was really affected by my trip to the global north. Even talking to allies and hearing their discourse about how they are limited with the shrinking space and stuff, or even some of them saying like, well, I'm not affected personally, so I understand, but I don't feel bad as you do. So it's like, it's really, yeah, it angers me and it made me really sad. And it also brings, the climate emergency and the environmental emergency as a whole. It gets you into a lot of despair about what is really achievable. So then I came back, and to me, it was a relief to be working only with Southern partners. you know, it's it's really like it's a bond, that it's something that we need to do, like to hear the Southern feminist voices and other partners in the South because it is really hard. And of course, you have allies in the North, but there is this sense that they don't feel the urgency, and they're not acting accordingly. And so yeah, so that is something that I really wanted to say. And next year I will be full on working on this issue in the global north, but for the time being, with my health being this fragile, I really need to work with like-minded people who understand and are not only in solidarity. I hate that word now, with the North being in solidarity with the South. It's like, no, you need to act, because you have a responsibility to undertake and act accordingly in your own territories, and you need to confront those powers that are perverse, not only harming your communities but the rest of the world. And since they're not doing that, then I'm tired of them. So I need to go back and heal a bit. And next year we're coming back, because of course our northern partners are so key and are so crucial. They actually may be well intended, they just need to be steered into a southern decolonial framing. And some of them, they have the thoughts, but I don't know why they're not going into action. So that is exactly what is happening with the climate change, that again, developed
Mm,
countries accepted loss and damage because of the pressure of the social movements in the South, the G77, the islands being so vocal. And there are so many initiatives like Vanuatu's trying
yep.
to bring all of these issues into international court. So
Uh-huh.
these are very important actions that are happening. And I wish there is some sort of um, manner to organize these voices more strongly. But anyway, so that was my rant. Like,
Yeah. So I think it's a very good suggestion for yourself, no? As you are recovering and trying to, get stronger, go with your crowd where you are
yes,
less stressed and where
yes,
you can hatch up these crazy ideas of how do we hold the global north accountable,
yeah.
whether it's governments, corporations, and even uh, you know fellow
INGOs and
civil
NGOs.
society. Yeah,
Yes,
INGOs. That's true, for your own sanity and for your own health.
yes,
But you did take on the IMF. So
yes.
what was that all about?
That was both BlackRock and IMF had been in my mind during that trip in the summer. And of course, I was actually very vocal during that trip about BlackRock. And I was saying, this is not something that is about us as feminists. Like, everybody should be calling this out, right? And in the end, I was in New York drafting the letter because I was like, why is nobody doing anything? And of course, Sanam was also like, yeah, let's do it. So we started to, and I was, I'm bulldozer Emilia. So I wanted to really take it out really quickly. And Sana was more strategic, like, no, let's do this in a big, big way. So she was fantastic. And so we started working as a team. And so that was one. But on the other hand, there was this IMF gender strategy. And again, I was trying to move actors who were welcoming the gender strategy. And I was like, we cannot welcome this. And let me tell you what happened. The IMF is now saying that, did you know there's a lot of gender based violence in developing countries? And what about sexual and reproductive health and rights? Women are not having access to that. And, women need education, and women need access to health. So let's help governments in doing that. And now we're going to have a gender strategy. And it's like, no. First of all, you don't have the knowledge, the experience, the capacity, the mandate to do any of those things. Second, it is you with your austerity measures and your conditionality, colonial impositions into developing countries to say, cut your budget, don't spend on social issues like health and education and gender-based violence and access to contraceptives and stuff. It is your responsibility. You have been violating women's human rights by forcing our countries to cut down the fiscal space, to cut down on budgets on all of these spaces, because you want to profit from their poverty and their situation, because you have lent them money and you have spiked the interest rates so that our countries cannot do anything but to spend all of their revenue money into paying debt servicing. So that is one thing that was obscene to me. And many organizations who engage with the IMF, they were saying, yes, but it's good that they're talking about gender. No, it's like, it's a commodification of our agenda. It's like now, and the part that is more worrisome is that now the IMF saying we're gonna expand our staff in the territorial level, at the national level, to advise on governments and ministries of finance and stuff on the policies on gender. And they have the cash right here, and so how that is going to undermine the real knowledge of feminists on the ground, of the gender machineries, and everybody else who. And it's not only issues pertaining to women. These are all of the social floors and the social sectors. So can you imagine the IMF blackmailing our governments in saying you have to do this with this sector and this other, and while the local voices will be totally swiped away? And that is, of course, a de facto expansion of the IMF under our agenda. So this is why we're saying not in our name. Like, you're disgusting already, so don't use our name to expand your scope of action. And the other thing, of course, is that they're saying that they're gonna they're saying, one, they're gonna impose gender conditionalities to our country. So whatever program they have access to funding or whatever, let's ask them for more conditionalities, which is disgustingly colonial. And then second, they say we are going to financialize the lives of women. Like, for instance, poor women, oh, they need a bank account, so we can give them a credit card, and then we are, of course, the banking industry is the one that is profiting. Well, there are communities in which they have perhaps a monetized dimension, but most of the agendas, for instance, for indigenous people's daily lives, that happens outside a monetized relation. They have a wealth of relationships that are also economic and productive beyond the money, beyond the monetized logic. So they're now bringing the banking industries precisely into the lives of those who are more marginalized by these structural horrible impositions. And so it is disgusting everywhere you see it. But the most important thing, it was for us, like, but what are you going to do internally? Like, what are you doing a gender human rights assessment, environmental assessment of your own impacts, of your own measures? Like everybody has been documenting the impact on gender inequalities of austerity measures for decades. And what are you going to do about it? That is a good gender analysis, right? Like, what is the analysis? And then how are you shifting from those practices? What are you doing internally with your conditionalities, with your policies on debt, on everything? And they were saying, no, austerity is going to be untouched. And this is nothing to do with how we operate internally or how we conceive. And they actually said, like, you don't understand macroeconomy because it's so complex. So we're not even going to explain to you why the IMF is going into this path. So we're just gonna talk about
Such
gender and women.
arrogance.
It's disgusting. So no, it's disgusting in any way. So this is why we had to come. Some people say that this is an outside strategy. I think it's an inside strategy. It's like we are in interlocution, in a dialogue with the IMF, because we are also technical experts and we're saying, no, this is not how you should be doing. So we launched this letter to reject the IMF's gender strategy. And again, to me, this is not only about the gender agenda or the feminist agenda, but it encompasses so many things that the IMF and the IFIs, the international financial institutions, are doing wrong. And we need to start calling them out more strongly and in a more straightforward manner, because otherwise we're just giving them a leeway to keep on doing what they're doing. So this is the letter, and I'm super happy to say we have about 200 signatures by organizations and another 100 by individuals. So now we're gonna submit this letter to the IMF staff, and then we need to check on next steps. But I think this is a really
Mm,
good show as well, that reform cannot come without transformative proposals. You cannot be a reformist and just say one step at a time, this is a good small step in the right direction. No,
yeah.
we are in a huge crisis. Like, what part of the crisis you haven't understood in practice? So that is also something that is really important. And let me share a gossip here that
Ooh.
happened in the annual meetings, because we just had the World Bank and the IMF just had its annual meetings just this month, at the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
the month. So we were in DC, and there was this strategy meeting with some organizations, and about how to start thinking about climate change. So first of all, that is a very good step, because we want the environmental emergency to be mainstreamed everywhere. So it's good that there is this question. But second, and more importantly, it was a long space and deep space to reflect, and we reached the point in which we were questioning the growth paradigm in itself. you know it's not only about, oh, they're invading our countries, but it's this very same logic of promoting economic growth that is
Uh-huh.
wrong. So it's not the reform of the practices on the small programming level, but really about the paradigm, again with the UN paradigm of promoting economic growth, which is also like so stupid at this point, so outdated, and even with their own internal reportings in so many fields, they're just keep on promoting economic growth. So I think
Well,
this
they
is a
call
sad.
it the Great Reset, right?
What?
They call it the Great Reset. So, after the pandemic, they just
Yeah,
reset everything. But this time, the idea is it's a clean, green, inclusive
I know.
growth paradigm still.
I know. And I think we should talk more about the green agenda, because the more and more I'm working on those issues this year, I'm actually not even supporting a Green New Deal. Green is not the path. We cannot green things if we're not transforming the paradigm.
Yeah,
So
I
we
also have
need.
some concerns about this Green New Deal, as if, a piece of legislation can solve the structural problems that the world faces. But that's
Yeah.
for another conversation.
But
So,
just wanted
what
to
I'm,
point out, just want to point out, because there are our audience were hearing from us last year about a feminist and the colonial Green New Deal.
mm,
And we were more aligned to the UNCTAD's proposal, that a global Green New Deal would have to come really with a package of macro and
yep,
institutional reform. That was fine, but still there are missing pieces. And I think we should really go back and assess what we are saying, and if greening is the path, despite how we wanted to bring it the colonial and feminist, or is there also
mm,
something to do with this notion of growth in
yeah,
itself, and
that's
then it
true.
cannot be greening anything. So that's a conversation we need to have somewhere in another
We
time.
do. And
Yeah.
actually, now that you mentioned it, I was also working on, a project that we call the systemic transformation needs of a global just transition. Because
Oh,
people keep talking about just transition, blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
as if this can be realized at the shop level or at the factory level. And, not taking into consideration what is out there in terms of systems and structures that discourage us from realizing just transition.
Mm.
And this is where our friend Stefano Prato of the CSO for FFD Group also helped us broaden our appreciation of this conversation around why we need to engage in financing for development issues if we want to push for just transition, if we want to push for climate justice. And what I appreciated about that conversation with Stefano is, in the climate space, we try to think about sources of finance. And a lot of people in the global north are saying that we could probably propose the unused SDRs of the International Monetary Fund as a source of climate finance because they come with positive conditionalities,
No.
caring for the environment, etc., against deforestation. So Stefano said
You can send me the list
positive
of those people saying.
conditionalities are still conditionalities,
Exactly.
It undermines developing countries' sovereignty to determine their own path. So
Yep.
even if it's well meaning, and we know it's not, these
Exactly.
conditionalities from the
Exactly.
IMF
Don't
are
be
not
naive.
positive, no? Because they come with a package of neoliberal prescriptions. We
Hmm.
know our political economic history. Excuse-moi. We know
Yeah.
that this is not in any way to the benefit of developing countries. So, a lot
Yeah.
of the things, and even in the climate space, I see some publications, some civil society groups calling to use the IMF SDRs as a source of
No.
finance. So I said, no, please, no. There needs to be more conversation between, Stefano said it's the climate justice hooligans and the development finance rebels. I was the one who added development finance rebels
Yes.
because he said we are climate hooligans. But I think, in terms of coherence also in what civil society asks in these official processes, I think it's very dangerous when CSOs start saying, yeah, we can use the IMF's special drawing rights because they come with positive conditionalities that care for the environment. Oh
Yep.
my gosh, I almost fell off my seat. And I think I'm only starting to influence some of our networks and allies
Nice.
why this is bad. This is bad news and why we shouldn't be doing it.
There is this financing commons process as well, which is
Mm,
precisely a meeting of international financial institutions of all sorts, and they hold this summit. It just happened a couple of weeks ago,
yeah,
and again,
yeah.
I couldn't have the capacity to deal with it all because of my health. But this is the type of messaging that we need to influence with the NGO community, the climate community that is concerned about finance, and it's just going around asking for more money and pushing conditionalities everywhere. And of course, that is the discourse that all of these financial institutions want to hear. Like, yes, we're the benevolent ones. We're gonna with come and save the world and profit while we're doing it. And naive people are just going about, yeah, allowing this type of discourse. And then he says she loves development finance rebel.
I
Yes.
like climate hooligans.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I was thinking maybe we should invite Stefano Prato to our Despise Girls so the audience knows him, but I don't know if he's gonna be balancing our energy. He's gonna be very wise as he always is, but also very contained. And okay, let's see if he wants to come for an hour
Yeah,
of
we should
irreverence.
invite him. We should
Yeah,
invite him because there's a lot of wisdom.
he.
What I appreciate it is he has a good sense of why we must engage the United Nations, even if,
Exactly.
you know, it has so many problems. Precisely because it has so many problems, that's why we need to engage, this process and this space.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
what else?
you're going to Egypt also, huh?
Yes, and we're having also. I mean, if the audience wants us to talk about something, let us know in the
Yeah.
chat. We're super happy to be here. We just want to talk about everything. Yes, and we're also another thing that happened, well, many things have happened, but in the FFD realm, the financing for development realm, on the one hand, there has also been, let's call it a victory, but we are still waiting for final outcome. But the developing countries, the G77 has tabled a proposal on a global tax body, which is
Yeah.
really important because, as again, we have discussed here how illicit financial flows and the corporate tax abuse has been punishing our countries into a lack of fiscal spending, precisely because of all of the tax evasion that is happening, especially by corporate actors. So this is a great proposal going in the right direction, and we're looking forward to seeing how this discussion is going to happen in the General Assembly. And the second element is that we are hearing that there may be a proposal on a possible time for an FFD conference. So
Yes.
again, the language is very, very opaque and obscure, so we don't know if it's going to happen in the end. But then all of those elements are positive because that will be a space to discuss all of these issues that, as you were
Yeah.
mentioning, that Stefano was talking about, the bigger picture. And so having an FFD conference will be very key. So we're going to keep on discussing these things a bit during the end of this year and then in the early months of next year.
Mm. Oh my gosh, a lot of things now are
I
happening and
know.
will happen. Next year is also going to be big in terms of this what's this?
The summit,
Summit of the Futures. I'm
I hate
imagining it's
it.
some futuristic robot
I
AI
hate it.
gathering.
I hate
But
it.
I'm gonna be working on an alternative Summit of the Futures
Of
project.
course you are.
Yes.
There,
So we'll
don't forget
probably be
about me.
of course, we will be putting together a concept and trying to figure out all of those administrative stuff. But it would be great if that can be a moment where we can, bring together some of the craziest minds, activist
Yes,
hearts,
Tracy. We love
etc.
Tracy.
Yes. So we will have an alternative summit of the futures. And we're not
Love
talking
it.
about, robotics AI here, but what our vision of the future would look like.
I
And
mean,
yeah,
no, yeah, and this is really important. And I'm so glad you talked about this because, again, as you're saying, the Secretary General is pushing this summit of the future. And we need to go back and say that is not the solution. Remember, we were this year, some of us in the FFG group, we launched the position saying that we are against our common agenda, and the Summit of the Future is part of those proposals. So we really want to reinvigorate our rejection. The Women's Major Group also rejected this proposal because again it holds at the very heart the corporate capture of the UN and the larger influence of multi-billionaires into the global decision making. So I think it's great to have a parallel conversation, but we still also need to challenge internally. I mean, that's the spirit of your whole proposal, right? To challenge what is happening officially that is not sufficient, that is really not responding to what we need. So yeah, we are. I inviting the audience to join us to challenge more strongly this type of discourses that are going to be held in the Summit of the Future. And there are proposals that we can keep on pushing on our side without legitimizing these type of actions that are just summits. Wealthy people are gonna come, they're gonna flash out their wealth, and
yeah,
governments are gonna deliver statements. But since it's not a negotiated process, then nothing is gonna come out of it but pledges that are earmarked for the specific will of the wealthy people without any comprehensive plan. And also, the solution is not that. Precisely, we need an FFD conference and Finance for Development conference where we bring the countries to negotiate, where there is a civil society participation in a transparent manner where is fairness in one vote, one seat, etc. So yeah, just let stay tuned for the mobilization we're gonna do next year about this as well.
Yes, one battle at a time, no?
Yes,
But also considering that all of these battles are also interconnected, as
totally.
we win battle per battle, we also uh, gain our strength and our,
Yeah,
credibility and legitimacy to be in these spaces.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And that is what will happen to us in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, in 1 week.
I'm gonna see you in 1 week, Ted.
Yes.
Really?
But I heard that we cannot be so openly demonstrative of our gender identifications,
Yeah,
Uh,
you were saying that. I mean, that has
yes.
to do with the LGBTI community's
Yep.
protection, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, of course.
So let's see, how we can try to make the most and try to challenge that all of those restrictions,
Yeah,
because we do need to bring the voices of those who are not going to that climate space next week. No, and
yeah.
this includes communities who are often left out of these processes. I remember again the great wise guru Stefano.
Enlighten us.
Yes. So he said, we should be really talking to movements whom probably are concentrating at the community level, and explain to them, show them how all of these macro processes, seemingly so far removed from their reality, will
Yeah,
come like a river. It's going to be a river that will rampage through them and
yeah,
demolish whatever is left
yeah,
of them, or whatever it is that they're trying to build up.
yeah. Yeah,
Because
this
I
is
think
really important
yeah. Because I
because I
totally
keep,
understand, no, why a lot of people would be saying, "Oh, that's just another UN meeting, etc., etc. It doesn't
yeah.
concern me. It doesn't affect me." But no, that's not true.
Or there are those voices that are saying, why are you focusing on macro? You should be focusing on local solutions and local realities. And it's like, yeah, precisely because I'm concerned about local realities is that I'm working on macro because this is the flaw that is gonna swamp everything if
Yeah.
we don't stop it. It's really key. And I was gonna say, Peter, I want to commit to you to
Uh
do a
huh.
transmission at the COP with the Despise Girls at some moment. We need to force ourselves to do it. And let me tell you why.
What?
I'm more
Let's do it.
excited about new ideas, not new, but that are really shaping up new possibilities. Like, and we haven't discussed this about why, if, for instance, the relationship with growth is impacting climate change and the future mining, extraction, etc. So that's something that we need to talk about because also these white promises of transition to clean energy
Mm,
without reducing growth is gonna just add up to a huge, massive extraction in mining and in every other resource, and that's gonna the global south is gonna pay with its own biodiversity, and we need to talk about it because climate change is not the only emergency, the environmental emergency that is out there. There are many others, so we need to talk about that, and we didn't have time here, but I want to position that agenda also in the COP because otherwise it's against these white people thinking that they can green anything and they can keep on living their life
mm,
standards and we are paying all of the costs. So that would be one. And really talk about growth in the context of the environmental agenda because we're trying to bring the environmental agenda into the economic discussions, but we need to bring the economic discussions into the environmental. So that is one. And the second is, of course, we're going to be updating in the in the moment to our audience what is happening, what are the debates, what is the gossip out there, what are the fights, what are the failures, because in the end people see the outcomes but they don't see everything that is happening and that has been dropped off, and what is the
Mm.
nasty positions of powerful countries in the everyday life, or how is it really harsh for activists to send out their messages in a very difficult context. So it would be good to update our audience while we're there.
And we are going to be a challenge to be creatively discreet or discreetly creative given the context now where we will be going in the next 2 weeks.
So mostly you will be following loss and damage.
Yes, I am. Loss and damage and this discussions around the new collective finance goal.
Yes, I'm gonna be doing that as well.
Yay.
I want to focus on climate, but also human rights. I don't know if I
Mm.
will have time for gender, but we'll see.
You will have time for everything, Amelia.
Time, yes, but my health, in my energy, I don't know. But
Yeah, but I'll make sure that by 7 or 8 p.m., we're out of that cop space and going back to our hotel to have a
nice.
nice rest.
Yes, promise.
Yes. That's our promise to each other. Can we promise that the maximum that we will stay, at least in the first week, would be 8 p.m.? Because I cannot promise for the second week, how things are. But
Before
we'll
we leave.
promise to bring good food, at least some food.
Yes.
And the global south in me, I'm very mindful about our food security and food sovereignty. I'm bringing a small cooker and I'm bringing my rice.
Wow, that's amazing. No, I'm
Of
worried about what am I
course.
going to eat because again, it's gonna be gluten packed
But
everywhere.
not to worry, you will have rice, my dear, courtesy
Love
of your
it. Thank you. Love it.
because it's
Before
going to be
we,
2 weeks of not eating right, not sleeping right. So we also have to look after each other. Make
yeah,
sure that at least if we don't get to sleep right, we get to eat rice.
love it. All the carbs we need, but in a healthy way. Just want to
Yes.
say before we close that there has been a report that is published just 2 days ago on climate and racial justice that is really important, and we can keep on talking in the next session. But there have been many reports that have been published on, again, the environmental emergency, but how that impacts us all, and this is linked to the colonial dynamics. So also stay tuned for the campaign of campaigns networks and all of our, you should be following that's Twitter by now, and Rina's and
And
Despise,
Emilia's also.
follow me. So we will be sharing all of these reports, but it's really important that people also start doing their readings before we go to the COP.
Wow. And
Yeah,
time flies. It's already
that's
been
a wrap.
1 hour. We've been talking nonstop, but still, there's so much more to talk about.
I know, miss you. I miss you, audience. Please let us know in your comments, and
Yes.
see you in the
And
special edition at the
are we
COP.
going to see you and Rena tomorrow for another special episode?
Haven't heard from Rina, so I don't think so.
The night is still young. It's only morning in your part of the world.
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
Okay. Ciao. Love
All
you.
right. Thank you so much.